trade deadline just hit. Obviously, it's big news. Everybody watched it. I think the NBA has the best trade deadline in the world. I don't know how many trade deadlines there are, but for sure the NBA has the best, man. So both of y'all, just weigh in real quick. Who's your biggest winners? Which team got the most return? And what was your favorite trade? Who's going to be the most fun to watch?
What team got the biggest return? I mean, I think that's very obvious is Phoenix Suns. These trades don't happen. You don't.
Is that obvious?
Top 15 players of all time. You remember those trades when guys like that get moved. So it's groundbreaking when you can acquire a guy like that. I don't care who you gave up. Guys like that don't get traded, like mid-season at the deadline. So I think that's like he's easy money, man. Like there's no one like him, and he's also a guy that is okay with playing with other people. You saw him do it in Golden State. You saw him do it in Brooklyn. He wanted to make it work with Beard. He wanted to make it work with Kyrie. It didn't. But we've seen him make it work. He loves to hoop. Now he's with CP. Now he's with Book. He can catch his breath at times and then still go his 12 or 15 or whatever he does every night. I mean, it almost doesn't matter who you have around them.
So that's your favorite? That's your championship favorite now? No, you said the Bucks.
My championship favorite, no, but that's my favorite in terms of what you can get at the deadline.
Okay.
I think the two matchups I see happening, I think it's Phoenix-Milwaukee, which would be a great rematch, or Phoenix-Boston.
Okay. Goods, who you like, man? Biggest winners, favorite trade?
Yeah, I think it's Phoenix. I think, getting KD, and kind of like Sam said, KD's kind of been in this situation playing alongside other stars, having to fit inside of a system that was already there. But I'm interested to see how the Luka Kyrie situation works out over there. I think that one might take a little more time, you know what I mean? And I just don't think that they're as complete of a team, you know what I mean? But I'm interested to see how both of those situations work out, because I see like the Luka Kyrie dynamic, kind of like when CP came to James Harden and the Rockets. You know what I'm saying? You got two guys that obviously are used to having the ball in their hands, and everybody's wondering how they're going to share it. And I felt like James and them started to figure it out. But I'm really interested to see how the West is going to shake out now, man. And I think it's super dope that we got some really, really good teams in the East and some really, really good teams in the West, because as y'all remember, there was a while where it was almost like, the East just had like one or two, and then the West was just stacked. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is gonna be exciting.
Yeah, I hear y'all. I think that the Suns are gonna be fun to track. I do think that the Lakers were the biggest winners in terms of trade value. I think you get a guy in D'Angelo Russell who's a perfect fit with LeBron. That's the type of guard. Obviously LeBron.
How is he a perfect fit
today? Because that's the type of guard that LeBron has been successful with throughout his career. A scoring guard, off-ball guard, Mo Williams, Kyrie Irving type of guard. I'm not saying he's Kyrie Irving, but that's the type of guard that LeBron has thrived with in his career. That's just it is what it is. And you add Anthony Davis, and you add a shooter in Malik Beasley, and you add just a guy who's going to go get it in Jared Vanderbilt, and then a big who can knock down shots, protect the rim, Mo Bamba. And on top of that, you still have the chance to go retool in the offseason. As far as like the near term, Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns. They're instant title contenders. But Kevin Durant is still, 34 years old? Coming off an Achilles. So the Phoenix Suns, again, their championship window is now 2 years. So if they don't win, and their depth is not great, they gave up a lot of depth. They gave up a lot of first-round picks. So if they don't win in the next 2 years, which I'm not so sold, and I don't think you guys are either, that they win this year, where does that leave the Suns with the 38-year-old Chris Paul, or 40-year-old Chris Paul, and a 36-year-old Kevin Durant? You got cap space. Phoenix isn't a place that, guys typically go in free agency. Obviously, that could change with Book there. But where do you go after that?
Yeah. Well, it's called new owner syndrome. I think his name's Matt Ishbia. He just took over last week. You have to make a splash early. You have to make a splash. You can't just say, we went out and We made it work with Jay Crowder. Come on back, Jay. Like, you have to make your mark as a new owner. Hey, I'm all in.
Yeah.
You're making Phoenix be like, this guy's for us. We got Kevin Durant coming. But, like, you have to do that if you are in that position as a new owner. You have to make a move early like that. So I think that's where that move came into play. And then, like, in the flip side of that trade with Brooklyn, I just think they just needed a complete culture reset. I don't think this was about KD. I think this was, the Kyrie stuff and KD last summer and then James Harden. Like, all the promises that didn't go through, I just think they had such a good culture with that team with D'Lo and Theo Pinson. Like, that was a fun team they had with Dinwiddie a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. They brought these guys in. Culture changed. And I think they're now like, let's try to, recoup that chemistry we had and that old culture. So I think and then getting guys in that Phoenix deal, like legit pieces, I think overall this will be, I think, good for both sides. And I think maybe more for Brooklyn in the long run. But if you can win a title and make your title window, even if it's just a year and a half of like, hey, we have a shot here, I think you got to do it as a new owner.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the owner sentiment, but I don't think that necessarily makes you the biggest winner of the trade deadline. But I do agree. I do agree with
Fair.
that point. But Goods mentioned the CP trade to Houston. For those that don't know, you were a part of that trade. Went to Los Angeles. So I guess just touch on, man, what was the feeling like going from Houston, who had been a title contender? You got to play. You got as a young player, got to go deep playoff runs. You're playing with James Harden. To LA, who at the time was kind of, I'd say maybe similar to like that Brooklyn with D'Angelo Russell type situation. They were retooling, but you guys had some pieces. I think Tobias was there, right? So
we still had Blake. We had DeAndre.
Still had Blake, DeAndre. So you still had a good team, but what did it? Was there excitement going to LA? Did the sales kind of come out leaving the Houston situation, or what was that like being a part of that trade?
It was tough. It was hard. The first time getting traded is always the weirdest. I was at the facility mid-lift, and my phone started blowing up, and went on Twitter, saw that I had been traded for Chris Paul with Lou and Montrez, and man, it was what, 5 guys? 5 of us going? Pat. Yeah, so it was like our whole second unit getting traded to LA for Chris. And so I go up and talk to our GM, and I just didn't know I'm like, what's next? They're like, just go home. You're going to get a call from LA, and, piece by piece, they're going to, figure it out. So you fly out there, and, that's the thing about trades. Like, trade deadline moves is crazy, right? Because, like, these guys have more than just basketball. They have families and kids and dogs and houses and cars. It's like there's so much that could be a whole other podcast that goes into a trade. But being part of that first trade, especially for a guy like Chris Paul, like, I get it from the business aspect. In terms of my career, it just kind of started a domino of like one trade after another, that kind of stunted my future in the NBA, but I think the way I handled it was as good as I could. Still found ways to be in rotations and get on the court. It's just I got labeled as a guy like, why didn't he not stick with one team? But being part of that first trade, it's anxious moments. You want to prove yourself like right away, but it's just like, if it's not in the plans, it's not in the plans. But the trade deadline anxiety is something I do not miss, because that is a dog of a day.
Yeah, what's it like restarting? Once you get to a new team, what are the difficulties with that?
I think it's funny because you go from when I was in Houston, we had D'Antoni, we had this run and gun system. I knew my role in the second unit. I could walk up from the bench. I could see, I know what time coach is going to turn around and point at me to go in. Like, he didn't even have to tell me. I knew at 4 minutes left in the first quarter, I get up, I take my warm up off, I walk to the scorer's table. 6 minutes left in the second quarter, I'm coming to the bench. Like, I knew exactly every game what I was going to do. And now it's like, okay, new routine, new staff, trying to prove yourself to a new head coach, a new assistant staff. You get in there for your workouts, and you're like, okay, who's my guy here? What's your name? Like just learning these little things that make the game a little harder, because you're like, I just want to prove, I want to show, I want to have a really good workout today, so he can go to Doc Rivers and be like, Sam's like, he could really help us, so that restart every year was really tough for me. I'm in year 8 and I've had 11 head coaches. It's like I always have felt like I'm trying to prove myself to a new staff. And I think that's what makes me a little, as Jordan knows, like I'm very, when it comes to basketball, I'm very like particular about certain things, because I want to prove. I don't want to waste time. I want to be able to show who I am, and I think that comes from kind of being anxious from getting traded a lot and switching staffs and learning new things. So that restart's hard, especially for a young player, and it helped going to LA with like a guy like Pat Beverly and Lou Williams and some vets that I've been through it before, and those guys were really my crutch for that year.
Is there a difference in like in psychology from the organization? Because obviously in Houston you're their first round pick, so they're invested in you, right? When you go to LA, you're a part of a trade, and is there a difference in the way they look at you? Because like I said, you're not their first round pick, and what is that difference if so?
Yeah, it's so different, because I didn't have, you don't grow that bond, that mesh. You don't have, Lawrence Frank didn't draft me, Doc Rivers didn't draft me, so they don't have that I want to be right about him mentality. Daryl Morey wanted to be right about me in Houston, so let's keep seeing how Sam's doing, or let me keep checking in on Sam and see how is he healthy, whatever. So that is a little different. Doc isn't one to really play favorites. I think he's pretty good about he knows what's going to help his teams win and lose. He's very cut and dry about things, which was hard at times, but I think definitely, not being there from day one, coming in, but still coming in as a young guy, kind of puts you behind the 8 ball a little bit, and again, like hits back on like you have to like do anything in your power to try to prove it day in and day out. And luckily we had a weird year that year that almost forced me to play, because there was times I knew Doc didn't want to play me because I wasn't playing that well. And thankfully there was a bunch of stuff that was happening that year that got me on the court and got me back comfortable in his system. But my head was swimming a lot that year, and I wish I could go back and almost redo it, because there's a lot of things that I didn't think I handled properly, and that now as a more seasoned pro, I think I could do way better.
If you could hop in the DeLorean right now and go back to that trade, being on kind of like, obviously Chris Paul's the headline in that trade, what advice would you give to yourself on how you said you handled it as good as you could have, but what would you do differently? Like, what would you tell, say, a Cam Johnson right now, who's on the other side of the Kevin Durant trade and going to a place where his names might not be mentioned as much for the next couple of years?
Stand out, don't fit in. I was worried about, how I am. I wanted to not step on anyone's toes, and I wanted to be liked. It didn't mean that I didn't want to like be on the court and show who I am. It was just like, I go be assertive, like go piss some people off, especially early when you get there. Make them feel you, make them know that you're in the gym. And I think that was something that I was so shell-shocked about the trade and hadn't been through that before, that I was kind of like second guessing, just like, okay, how do I go about this, or how do I make them like me, or how do I make them understand that I'm doing my best, instead of just like going out there and being an MFer and like just like, I'm not here to make friends. And the way you make friends is earning respect on the court and going out there and not being afraid of conflict, not being afraid of doing the dirty things, the little things. And that's one thing I would definitely say, is just like, don't fit in and don't be afraid to stand out in whatever way you can.
Before we move on real quick, this is a random question, but since you did play with James Harden, what similarities do you see between James Harden and Luka, if any?
Well, that word that you loved, the heliocentric offense.
Listen,
I
man,
think he
listen,
plays.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop. In honor of Black History Month, no, actually, that ain't got nothing to do with it. I just wanted to throw it. I just wanted to make, but no, heliocentric does not belong in basketball conversation.
Well, that's like the biggest.
It comes with the Badger bachelor degree. You know what I mean? You get like five big words you can take with you to like any country. You know what I'm saying? You can use it in any setting.
Boy,
like,
you went to Stanford. You went to Stanford.
You never hear that. You never hear that in basketball terms. Like where I think Luka's usage rate is like 39.
Yeah, I've heard it.
I think James is when my second year was his I think his best year. He was at like 37% or something like.
Yeah, I've heard it.
So I see the similarities is I see them as guys that are able to literally create an offense and an efficient offense with sometimes just the ball in their hands. And that's people complain about it, but also people don't realize how hard that is.
Facts.
Like you have a whole team loaded up against you and you're still making it work. And when James was out of games sometimes we could not score the ball. There was times. And then he comes back in and everything's working again. So that's similarities I see.
Not only to put up numbers, but to win doing that is extremely difficult. I think there's guys
Luka last year got to the Western Conference Finals last year. James went to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. We won 59 games my second year. Like James was leading us to wins, and I also think they're both really, really, really good passers and willing passers. They get a lot of field goal attempts up, but they have the ball so much. I think it slips through the cracks how good of passers they are. I think less this year as James is leading the league, but the passing that they can make and get guys in position to score and score easy baskets is a rare quality that those two do at an exceptionally high level.